Imagine cutting your costs in half. VTEX, the enterprise platform offering commerce, OMS, marketplace solutions, and much more, can help you reduce your total cost of ownership by at least 50%. Trusted by global leaders such as Carrefour, Walmart, Cencosud, VTEX is the go-to choice for both CIOs and CEOs who demand excellence. Discover how VTEX can elevate your business today. Visit vtex.com or click the QR code on your screen. Let's go to the episode. Welcome everyone, we are today speaking from Lisbon with a retailer coming from the other side of the world. Today we'll talk about digital transformation with Benjamin Thompson. He's the head of global insights and strategic partnerships at Endeavour Group, Australia's leading drinks and hospitality company. Benjamin has spearheaded Endeavour's digital evolution, harnessing AI, analytics, and strategic partnerships to reshape one of Australia's retail powerhouses. With extensive global experience and driving passion for driving cultural and technological change, Benjamin has significantly influenced how Endeavour meets evolving customer expectations and stays ahead in the competitive retail landscape. In our conversation today, we'll explore Benjamin's insights from leading transformative initiatives, discuss the future trends shaping retail, and learn how Endeavour leverages innovation to remain Australia's premier drinks retailer. Here's Paula Macadi, and this is episode 64 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. Ben, welcome to our studio in Lisbon. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to OFFBounds. So happy that we were able to make it here because you came from all the other side of the world.
Yeah, kind of. I was halfway here, I guess, when I was on holiday. Yeah.
Well, and then I caught you on holiday and say you have to come for my interview here. All right. So the reason I invited you here is because you have a very interesting job. And I want everybody to understand what you do. I'm confused myself on how that takes place.
Okay.
What is Endeavour Group?
Okay.
Let's just start with that.
So first of all, a little bit of context on the Australian market.
Sure.
So in Australia, there's a couple of things in Australia that make it slightly different or nuanced. Is one, we have a lot of duopoly industries where there's only really 2 or 3 big players. So those players will be the same size as a medium or large size American company, but there's only a few of us in the market. And then the other thing is alcohol, specifically in Australia. You cannot sell alcohol in a regular supermarket. You have to sell it in a dedicated alcohol store.
So it'll be a liquor store?
It'll be a liquor store,
okay.
yeah. So you have that changes how people buy alcohol in a couple of ways. One, they have to buy it separate to their groceries in you have small format, you have drive-through, you have large Toys R Us, Walmart size stores with only alcohol in them. And then the other thing is that alcohol purchasing becomes part of your discretionary income or part of your pleasure income. It's not part of your chore mission. So, your mission when you go to do your weekly shopping at the supermarket, that's part of your chore, your things I have to do activities. Whereas when you go to choose your drinks, that's part of the things you're doing for fun. So it changes a little bit the mindset. And what that means is for the alcohol industry, you have separate alcohol retail brands in the country. And Endeavour Group is a portfolio of brands where for packaged alcohol, as we call it, or packaged drinks more, because we don't just sell alcoholic drinks. We're just over half the market. But we also have a chain of hotel, pubs, restaurants, a bit like a motel, pub, restaurant. Most of them or all of them have a gaming room where you can play on the slot machines inside. And unlike the US or unlike some other markets, we're allowed to vertically integrate. So we produce, we also distribute for others. We also buy from all of the big guys like Ambevi, Diageo, etc. We have relationships with all the wineries, and we make our own wine and sell our own wine and export our own wine. It's a large end-to-end business.
Yeah, and you do like the D2C and you sell the others. Very interesting. So
yeah, we have about 2,000 stores.
Okay.
And we have about 300 hotel pubs as well. And the stores are divided into 2 different brands. One is called BWS, that used to be connected to the Woolworths supermarket group. And most of those stores, there's about 1,500, they're next to a supermarket and they're small format. So they could be a drive-through, they could be just pop in, pop out. And the mission...
So it's like I've just passed by and get some beers.
I need something, I've done my
Yeah.
shopping, I need something to go with my dinner tonight on the way home.
Right.
Or, hey, I'm going to a party, 95% of the population lives within 5 kilometers of a BWS, so I can go there on the way. It's the convenience mission. And the branding, the proposition, and everything for BWS is around convenience and making it easier and more fun to shop. Then we have Dan Murphy's, which is large format, anything from 500 to 3,000 square meters, like huge selection, and it's known for discovery, best selection in Australia, and we have like a proactive price guarantee where the pricing team is working 3-4 hours before the store opens to make sure that all the prices are automatically cheaper than everybody within a certain radius of every single store.
And that's the playground you were mentioning.
Yeah, that's like the candy store or the ice cream shop or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And you are the head of global insights and strategic partnerships. I love the name, but that can mean many things. What exactly do you do?
The context for that is a little bit the Australian dynamic.
Okay.
So we're not the only company to have this kind of function or this kind of role. If you think we are a $10+ billion business, there's plenty of medium-sized grocery retailers all over the world of a similar size. So we have the size and scale to be working with the very best technology partners. However, in Australia, if you're a new, successful technology startup or company, and you've started off in California or you've started off in the EU, you have got so many clients to choose from before you decide to expand to Australia. So we've got
geographically it doesn't make any sense to.
And it's not a huge market, right? So we've got all the big players there, and Australia is modern and up to date with everything, but to really get the cutting edge ways of adapting to customer needs or to really be able to take advantage of the newer technology out there, we need to understand what's going on out there. And then we go there, we grab them and we bring them to Australia, probably a couple of years before their market expansion plan was go over there. Do you know what I mean? So there was a lot of the time, and Woolworths has the same, and other industries, they do the same. They go to similar, maybe not the same conferences, they go to similar conferences, they look and meet and talk to other retailers and then see what would work and what components are similar to what we're trying to do and look at what we can take back.
So is your job going around the world looking for innovation and emerging technologies?
Yes, I mean, it's that, but it's looking for, the problems are almost always the same. Right, so it's everybody has solved or is trying to solve similar problems. So, and in some markets, because of certain dynamics, they've solved this type of problem faster. So we could learn robotics from one region versus we could learn AI from another region versus we could learn fulfillment, partnering, and in-store execution from another region. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we try to diversify the areas that we learn from.
That's interesting. But how do you prioritize what you're looking for? Because I'm sure if you search for several technologies, you'll see opportunities everywhere. But I think you have to prioritize the business goals or the business problems. So how is that dynamic of prioritizing?
It probably sits either side of a strategy flywheel. If the strategy team was at the top of the flywheel, right, and the strategy team kind of they need to look forward on what we should be doing and what we should be focusing on further out, and they need to help the different business units translate their goals or their year plan, 3-year plan into concrete goals, strategies, and solutions that they're going after. So the role gets global insights to feed into strategy team or into the strategic process for the business, and then also looks for deals with the business units and looks for solutions or partners or different ways to think about the problem for the existing things that they've already defined. It sits on either side.
And how does it work? Do you have an example, a story to tell us about a problem that you solved?
One thing that we do a bit of both of. When I first started in the role, the role started because I was talking to the teams, and we were still spending a lot of money in media channels. The eyeballs had dropped on, but everybody was so focused on trading and retail, and our financial year starts in July. It's like start of the financial year. Then you've got Father's Day, you've got races, you've got Christmas. It's summer at that time, so we're very much involved in a retail cycle. So I asked for some time to step outside and look for solutions to help us evolve and leapfrog. And at first, some of the feedback was, oh, you're bringing a solution and you're trying to find a problem. And that's very true. You should be trying to solve your existing problems. But that's not always 100% true, because that assumes you've defined your problem correctly. And sometimes we'd maybe define what we thought was the problem, and then we'd ask for a solution to that problem. But that was not how the rest of the world was perhaps looking at that problem. So it is a bit of both. Sometimes you see like what companies are doing and what solutions they're trying to solve, and that helps you reevaluate some of the problems that you're looking at. One thing that was probably one of the earlier ones that was more traditional was just as retail media was probably just in its infancy. So HookLogic was around at the time. They got bought by Criteo. Amazon was already well involved, but like there wasn't a lot of things happening in that space. And I was looking.
What year is that?
That was like 2016, 17.
Okay.
And I was looking after the e-com, digital marketing, the e-com trading, and the P&L. And we had fixed budgets at the time, but you could see from like traffic coming in and demand for people searching, then we weren't capturing all of that demand. But at the same time, there was like, okay, well, we've got a fixed budget and we've got a more traditional way of looking at how we spend. So we brought in CitrusAd, put it onto the Dan Murphy's website because it already had a lot of high traffic, and then we took the kind of the incremental revenue off that and pushed it back into the marketing budget. And then we reversed the growth trend. We were growing we projected a growth of a certain percentage for that year. It was the growth goes down after you open e-com, and obviously it grows very fast. And we reversed it. We actually grew more than the previous year because we were able to drive some of that fresh retail media revenue into the performance marketing budgets, or into some of use it to offset the margin for certain product campaigns. So that was one of the very, very early ones, which proved out the need or the benefit for looking outside for new partners and new solutions.
You mentioned something that is very interesting. Like, I often talk about digital transformation here, and sometimes it feels like there's a moment where the company is like, oh, we need to digitalize. But you mentioned something that is super cool, because you said like everybody was so busy in a day-to-day business, you had to step aside and think about other things. And that's very important, because sometimes we're so worried about the short term that you're not looking about the potential in the long term, or like another solution for the short term. So that's very interesting to have like this position to be looking at the future. And
I think that problem never goes away, right? So even in the first year or two, so there was a couple of successes, but then, and I had a small team, but then the team was then focusing on delivering and setting up and getting the projects that we brought in. And then suddenly the team that's meant to be looking outside is also stuck in a data. So that problem doesn't go away. The first really big or one of the first really big changes or pieces of technology that helped change how we think was whilst looking at media attribution platforms, and after bringing in CitrusAd for the first go at monetizing search on the site, started to hear about customer data platforms in the US. This is 2017, just before customer data platforms were about to explode. And then coming back to the business and saying, hey, we've been talking for some time around our retail brands being less kind of frenemies and competitive, and more leveraging each other and being strategic partners to each other. And there's a new capability that seems out there in the market, which helps unify all of your customer data across disparate platforms and technologies and give you a single customer view. Now, this sounds really old now, but at the time, this was a different way of thinking. And we took a team out to the US, we evaluated the market, we brought in one of those platforms, and that was around the same time, and it helped kick off our digitization journey, because suddenly you could see all of the benefits and necessity of creating a digital capability within the business.
So like it's almost like you're setting the foundation. Once you know your customer, now you can do many other things. Like I imagine like now that you have a single customer view, you can work on personalization.
And from there, we spun off a lot of things like personalization. We have entire personalization squads dedicated towards like enabling personalization in different parts of the business. A lot of that is built off or was built off those initial few partners that were brought in. And it's interesting because at the time, or during that period, we were trying to transform the mindset and trying to drive change in the organization via new technology. And then if you fast forward a few years, technology's all around us and is always changing. Now we're like, well, to be able to leverage all of this technology that's out there, we need to relook at how we're organized. So
wait. So first, how do you change the mindset of an organization through technology? First, you have to show.
So in the initial stages was showing what could be possible if we had different capabilities.
Your work is going to be a lot easier. You're going to make a lot of more money. You're going to stop wasting money this way.
Any business has revenue and margin goals, and they can be the levers to pull to get them. Can be market share, can be whatever, right? And so with those key goals in mind, you could see how understanding your customers across your portfolio, and then we have several alcohol brands and drinks brands within that portfolio. Being able to understand that across there could drive efficiencies, could help understand better what they're missing, where they're shopping for something else, and how we could get more of their share of wallet. So you were initially, it was changing the ambition and the mindset of the business via a new capability and a new technology.
Don't you get everybody addicted? Wait, love it. Let's go to the next.
Yeah, you do get some of that.
Okay.
I would say that Australia is a little bit of a late fast follower country.
Okay.
So if you look at how they adopted smartphones and some other things, they kind of they're a little bit more let's wait and see if this is actually going to work. But then as soon as it looks like it is, then everybody.
Yeah, can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah, as soon as they're ready, everybody's in. That's very different to in some other markets where it's very let's try this. Do you know what I mean? Like the US and Brazil actually a little bit more like that. It's let's try. So what happened in the end was, we built out a digital department. We now have large parts of the business focused on developing and elevating our CX and our applications and all of our digital capability, which we didn't have prior to some of those, prior to thinking about single customer view, thinking about how a customer data platform could help us. We didn't have any of those prior to that. But then I guess what I was saying is then moving on, now there's technology being used everywhere, and there's a lot of teams all over the business looking at different ways on how they can improve on what they need to do with different technologies. We have an entire data and AI division that sits within the digital data and AI area. But now it's okay, how do we then change the organization and the structure and how we work together to leverage all of the capability that's available versus, 6-7 years ago, it was how do we get ourselves future ready by
that was the problem you were
capability.
Solving before, how we get future ready, and now how we use all the capabilities.
How do we leverage everything that's available in the market so that we can keep evolving, keep being future ready, keep being competitive to the overseas entrants who are coming in, and the lower barriers to digitize that are out there right now. But also how do we keep up the pace and deal with all the other problems that there are in the market around raising costs and expectations.
And have you ever, I'm sure if you work with innovation and trying out different technologies, you also you fail, right? You probably have some thoughts that you had oh, this is gonna totally work, and then when you put it in practice it didn't.
Innovation is a kind of double-edged word, right? Innovation to some teams sounds like you're doing stuff that's not adding value, but a lot of the time what you're trying to do is trying to take something that we already know we want to do and do it faster, cheaper, better. And our first one of our really early attempts at that was when voice started getting some hype. But it was probably really early in the hype cycle. Alexa was just released, and then there was a bunch of startups promising, how you could just talk to your website, right? Which still now isn't quite there, right?
But we're close. We're
much
closer.
It's super close, right? But it's still not quite you just talking to a website all the time, right? It's only just after ChatGPT that started to become, or LLMs more broadly, that started to become reality. But we saw some examples of that early on, and we're like, okay, let's try that. And we put in a natural language, voice enabled chatbot onto one of our sites to test it out, and it didn't work. But when we were doing it, what it showed us was that actually, okay, one of the things that is around the language capability, but what it showed us is the way that our website was structured wasn't easy to read for the AI, the chatbot, right? And if it wasn't easy to read and navigate for a machine, how is it going to be easy to read and navigate for a person? So like that was a real actually for that to work, we would need to fix the taxonomy here, the descriptions here, the how we structure it here. It would need to plug into our existing search, so we would need natural language search. Do you know what I mean? It actually showed us all these different things to fix for the websites and the apps, and that set us off on a different journey. And we set up dedicated teams to go after that, and that actually started us on our whole journey where we pulled out the search capability that we were using on site, and we went out to market to look for a search partner. That all came from something where we probably got quite excited, and then we're like, whoa, we're way off being able to do that, and then that sent us on a wholly different path.
That's so nice, because now then you fix a lot of things, and eventually if you want to add more capabilities, now it's all settled, it's all good.
Yeah, that's the intent. Yeah.
From your perspective, as you go all over the world and see all emerging technologies, what do you think are the technologies that are going to be present everywhere, the good technologies in 3 or 5 years?
I mean, I think that AI is I probably agree with quite a few different people talk on it. Some people say it's both overhyped and underhyped at the same time. And I think that's probably the most accurate description, but I think it's in danger of being underhyped and not adopted fast enough. But that's the fault of, promises that are out there and capabilities and expectations that are too high for the moment. Agents is probably a good one. I think that we're going to be using those in more ways than you think. But, one person came to speak to the business and said something like, it's going to be till 2030 before we fully realize the capability of AI agents, right? Now, the way that gets interpreted to skeptical teams is,
let's just do it in 2030.
Leave it. It's not ready yet. It's not going to be ready till 2030. But the context of what is ready is very different. And then on the other side, you've got teams that are like, I just read a few articles about AI agents. I think I can replace all these tasks with AI agents. And we can stop these bits of work because AI agent will do it. And I'm like, no, it will still need the data foundations. It will still need real-time access to things. It will still need a lot of those other things that we're trying to do. Do you know what I mean? So I think that with everything, it'll be hits and misses with some people over-expecting and then making the wrong long-term decisions, and some people believing that they can wait until much later before they get started with it.
People are already like, we're not going to need 50% of our workforce. You can start thinking about reducing it.
Which is not the case. It just means that different types of jobs and different types of capabilities will be in the workforce.
And do you have, maybe you just answered, but maybe you have another answer for that. But do you have another technology that you think it's not worth the hype? Something like Metaverse that came, everybody believed in it, and then it didn't go anywhere.
I just think it depends what's useful for your business and your strategy. I mean, I do think a lot of that augmented reality and everything is very cool, but I think we were all guilty of getting caught up a little bit in the hype. But I guess the difference between that and AI is the metaverse is multiple technologies with kind of one use case, right? Whereas large language models and the generative AI part of AI was kind of one bit of technology with many, 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 many use cases. So that's kind of, and the use cases keep growing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the difference there. But I have listened to people talk during the metaverse hype era, and then the same person has been on stage after being asked these questions. And, he did say that a lot of the advancements in agents and robotics, that will help accelerate a lot of that metaverse stuff. I don't know, this is my own personal observation. I do wonder as well with timing. We were just Metaverse started to go crazy just as we were coming out of staying at home a lot during the pandemic.
Do you want to stay?
It felt more like logically, perhaps it felt of it's going to go in this direction. But then, we all suddenly said, okay, we want to be outside. We want to.
At the end of the day, we want to be with each other. We don't want to hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
In a meta world. I feel you have a fantastic role, but it takes a company to have an innovative mindset, I'll say, to first have a role like yours that is going to be bringing new stuff, and second, to implementing everything. What is the most critical leadership characteristic for a company that is going through a digital transformation? I think there's multiple answers to this question. There was early on, there's a book called, I think it's called Goliath's Revenge. It's a book about how large, legacy or incumbent retailers with, we're a 100-year-old company, with companies that are that old, how they modernize and update. And being able to balance there's a retail desire that everything needs to be invented by us, not invented here is one of the cardinal sins of digital transformation in this book, and it's talked to a lot. And I was chatting to a retailer in a completely different space, but of a similar size in Australia, and they had exactly the same problem. There's a tendency for the retailer to want to do everything themselves and invent everything themselves. So being able to have that humility that you don't need to be the solution, you can get more excited about the outcome for the customer, for the team, and for the business and your partners than needing to be the actual solution. I think this is one of the most important traits that I think not just businesses but teams and leaders within businesses need to have. I think it gives it gives the company more agility if they are willing to work with vendors, right?
Yeah, but also it's even within that not needing to be the one that's chosen the vendor.
Okay.
Yeah, not needing to be. You talk to teams, and you can tell by the question. And this is not exclusive to our company. This is just more broadly.
Yeah.
This is something that a lot of my peers talk to. The first reaction of a team is, oh, we can do that though. We know how to do that though. We can do that already. Do you know what I mean? And that being their knee-jerk reaction stops them thinking about what all the possibilities could be by partnering, or how that could give them more time to do something else. And that's where I think teams need to get out of the trap of being in love with being the solution versus being excited about what the outcome would be. The other thing I just think for all businesses, and I think this is more of a cliche and nobody will disagree, but the very, very top leadership needs to be constantly banging the drum around, we need to change, we need to look at new ways to do things, we need to evolve. Because if they're not, then, it's always going to filter less down. Do you know what I mean? So they need to be overly pushing that so that the people down get at least some of that passion, It's the difference between, I've been at CES and NRF, and the CEO of Walmart invites the CEO of Microsoft on stage,
the NVIDIA.
They invite a technology to come and present with them. It's the CEO doing that, not the head of digital and data. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're showing that you value technology, that you value innovation, that you value this partnership.
That's top of your mind, and that's what, when you're going to talk about your business, which is a grocery business or it's a home improvement business or whatever your business is, the thing you're talking about is how you're going to be driving change and the ways you're going to be doing that, which at the moment is around technology. It might not be in the future, and then weaving that into how you're also being customer and team focused as well. I just think that can't be understated how important I think that part is from the very senior leadership.
I love that answer. And then we are almost ending this interview, but I still have a few questions. But this one specifically, I'm sure you got a lot of companies, a lot of tech vendors pitching you all types of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you value when these companies are coming to you? What are you looking for in them? Because I'm sure some technologies might do the same thing or just a tweak. What makes you choose one?
So this is probably quite interesting. We've had some very different ways that we've ended up with certain partners. I could tell you a couple of couple of stories. Probably the one of the key is are they going to like working with us, and are we going to like working with them? Which is just a cultural question, but
on the emotional level, good company.
Are the people there? Do they hire? Do they choose? Do they employ people that are going to get on with us and that we want to work with? And I think this is often very hard to put into an RFP process that gets taken over by a team that has to do a lot of RFP processes, because that's very subjective. You can't cookie cutter questions to figure that out. And, interestingly, the customer data platform partner was recommended by the person who sold us our first attribution platform, because he knew the salesperson who worked there, and he said, I trust that if he's working there, he believes in that product. Do you know what I mean? And we met with multiple customer data platform products, and that was just around trusting in the team that we were talking to, that they were trustworthy. And in fact, that attribution platform was actually partnered with another CDP, but the salesperson said, look, they are great. We've partnered with them for these reasons, but for your needs, go and talk to these guys and go and talk to my friend. So I think the networking and trust and having different ways to evaluate that trust is super, super important. Being open to discovering companies in different ways. We're working with a company out of Latin America they have offices in Brazil called Globant. And, we found them while I was on holiday, and I was waiting in line for a tour, and they were explaining in Portuguese, which I speak. And the guy next to me, he didn't speak any Portuguese. So I said to him, where are you from? And he said, I'm Colombian. I said, okay, let me translate what he said. And then the tour guide said, okay, you two sit together. And so I was sat next to this guy, and he said, oh yeah, no, I work for Facebook and Salesforce and a couple of other American companies out of Bogota. And I was like, how does that work? Do they have offices there? And he's like, they do, but I don't do that. I work for a company that nearshores, and this is 2021, which nearshores. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting, I'd not heard of that model. Now, in parallel, we were needing to grow and scale with our digitization, but the cost base of doing that was looking more difficult every time we looked at how we would grow and scale it. Plus, the access to talent also was getting more difficult because everybody in Australian market decided to digitize at the same time. So I was already in my head, I was like, how can we sustainably grow and scale, and how can we stay up to date? And then I met this guy who had a different sourcing model to the ones we'd already looked at. And I kind of started talking to a few more contacts, and then I met a friend who worked for a tech company in the US. So yeah, we outsource all of our graphic design to Colombia. And somebody else in Singapore, where they were doing everything via Sao Paulo. I was like, okay, there's a whole region of the world that we hadn't looked at before for this kind of partnering. And then I was at Shop Talk. And at Shop Talk, you meet with other potential tech partners.
Yeah, you have the meetups.
Yeah. And in my meetup, I got partnered with a company called Globant. And we sat down, and the person there was very open. She said, look, I actually don't know your company. I think, and I had extra space to use up, I think you're an investment company. Because there is an investment company in the US called Endeavour without the U. And Endeavour Group is huge in our market, but we're the largest company you've never heard of for drinks, And I said, oh, no, we're a drinks retailer. What do you guys do? I said, oh, we're original Argentinian. We have huge tech centers in Colombia and different parts of the world. And I was like, oh, wait a second. I met a guy who does, tell me more. And then we started a relationship. And now we're partnering with Globant on multiple different levels. But, again, we found that we didn't find that by doing a RFI and going out to pitch.
Because you were around, it was you made yourself available, right? You went to Shop Talk, you asked questions, so yeah.
Yeah, and you follow the threads each time the threads come up.
Yeah, so you're not restricted to one region. I'm just gonna use technology from X country,
Always be, I guess, my thoughts there is always be open on this. The leads or the contacts will always come in different ways. I met you through somebody who works at Boticario, who I met through, I think when I was at a conference at e-commerce Brazil, and you know what I mean? So the contacts and connections always come in different ways.
And then we find out that we know a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's close the conversation, unfortunately. Just my last question then. What's your single most important piece of advice for leaders who want to build a culture of continuous innovation in their organizations?
Have thick skin. I don't know.
I like that.
Have thick skin. Be patient. There will always be people who don't want to change. There will always be people who want that. There's probably one. Curiosity, patience, and thick skin is, I think, really, really important. Some of our most successful ones that have really carried on and gone is because they've been picked up by the right leader in the business, and it's been theirs. And I'm sure if you interview these leaders, they will forget where it came from, and they'll be like, yeah, no, this is mine. I brought it in. I did this and I did this. And those are the best, when people can feel that they own it and it's theirs, and they can run with it. But to be able to continue to keep kind of hydrating or supplying a lot of those, a lot of different parts of the business, you need to have that resilience, that thick skin, the patience, and curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity we get a lot here on OFFBounds.
Oh yeah,
when
they say that a lot in the answer.
Like basically every leader that comes here and asks this question, they always say like curiosity is one of the factors, which is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean the human race evolved because some people decided to leave where they were and go for a walk.
What is
right?
over there?
What's over there? Let's go over there. Do you know what I mean?
If you cross the river, can you?
Yeah. So
if you press this button, if you try this solution.
Yeah, that doesn't always work, right? But
well, you have to be cautious
if I press this
too.
button, like.
Ben, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you on OFFBounds, and enjoy Lisbon.
No, thank you.